Recovery Elevator episode 581.
I keep proving to myself that I can live through it and that there is another day and another hour and another emotion right around the corner and that it's possible.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is how we quit. On today's episode, we have Lidia. She's 41 years old from Seattle, Washington, and she took her last drink of alcohol on August 31st, 2025. Great job, Lidia. Our Cafe RE monthly theme for April is physical wellness and movement. Be on the lookout for specialty chats in April about movement and how that can help our sobriety and our overall well-being. We've had a lot of new listeners lately, which is awesome. We're so happy to have you. There's a line in this space that says, you come here for the drinking, but you stay for the thinking. That's the reason I still attend recovery meetings. It's to deal with the human condition, aka the thinking mind. And man, does it still get the best of me at times. So yes, this podcast, it's all about quitting drinking. This is how we quit. But the bigger point here is to address the core of the dysfunction, which is the thinking mind. Okay, let's get started. Some of you may have seen the title of today's episode, which is The Best Way to Feel Better, and that's why you're tuning in, to feel better. And maybe you're in early sobriety and you're not feeling good. What's up the first 72 hours? And real quick, this is a big one. If you're not feeling good at the moment, welcome to being a human. It's part of the game, especially now that you're no longer numbing out emotions. But I don't like feeling bad just like the next person, and I usually start thinking of ways to feel better when I'm feeling bad. If that's you as well, you're in luck, because today I'm going to share with you the best way to feel better. And this, at least for me, has a 100% effectiveness rate. And before I share, what do you think it is? Do you think it's free? Does it come with a price tag? Is it something that you have to renew? So I'll share with you how the best way of feeling better has taken place in my life. So I've interviewed hundreds of people on this podcast, and some of those interviews have been scheduled on days that aren't going well for me. They're on my calendar right after I have an intense shit-talking session with the self, when I feel I have nothing to offer the world, or that I'm broken, and that I'm not the right person for the job. This has happened about 10 times, where I log into Zoom and say to myself, please don't show up, don't show up, don't show up. And then the interviewee shows up, and I'm like, fuck. But I'm always able to get it started. And I know the interview, it's not about me. It's about the person who is sharing their story with the goal of helping someone else. And with every one of these interviews where I'm feeling shitty at the start, I start feeling better within the first 5 minutes. And then when it's over, I feel great. I feel connected. I feel at home again. And I can't even remember why I was having a shitty day. Now there's more to this. I have felt better after every single interview I have done. When I finish the interview, I feel recharged. I feel ready to tackle whatever I have left in the day. So, listeners, that's it. That is the best way to feel better, which is to talk to another human being. Talk to someone you trust, someone that you know. Call someone. Maybe make an unplanned visit at a friend's house. Now, there's a reason they call it the 10,000-pound phone. It's because the mind or addiction wants you alone. Just knowing this makes it easier to pick up the phone. And a call is always best. A FaceTime is better. And a text is a step in the right direction. So that's it. It's not complicated. That's the best way to feel better. After the interview with Lidia, I'm going to share with you the second best way to feel better. And next week in episode 582, I'm going to talk about what we're connecting to. You may have heard the quote, the opposite of addiction is connection, but what exactly are we connecting to? I hope you all enjoyed today's intro. Before we hear from Lydia, let's hear from today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Let's talk financial stress. Financial stress affects far more than our bank accounts. It can take a serious toll on mental health and relationships. And with 88% of Americans feeling some form of financial stress at the start of 2026, this is a big deal. To complicate matters, so many people have their identity tied to a number in their bank account or how much money they have, or they compare themselves to others who might have more. None of this is good for our mental health or our nervous system. I want to mention that BetterHelp has 30,000 therapists and is the world's largest online therapy platform. They have an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars for live sessions based off 1.7 million client reviews. Talking it out always helps. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Lydia, how are you?
Hey, Paul. Good. Doing great.
Right on. Lydia, I'm excited to learn more about you and to share your story with the best audience on the internet. Let's get right into this. Lydia, when was your last drink?
It was August 31st, 2025 at 11:59 p.m.
And before we hit record, you mentioned you and your partner made a pact to quit before December of last year. Am I right on that?
No, it was actually that summer, and we needed to lay down a date. So that was supposed to be September 1st is when we got sober. So we made sure to get our last drink in there in that last minute of drinking.
Maybe I said December, but yeah, before September. And then curiosity's killing the cat. What was it at 11:59? What was your last drink?
Oh, I'm sure it was a bottle of wine that we were finishing from one of our favorite wineries.
Huh. And I've actually never asked that question before because I don't think it matters. And it's not like a glorious drink usually for people on this podcast, something that we'd rather forget. Well, Lydia, give listeners a little background about yourself. This is where you're calling in from, your age, what do you do for a living, maybe what your personal and family life look like, and then most importantly, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, let's get into it. My name is Lidia. I'm 41. I live in a small town outside of Seattle, Washington. I've been with my husband for 14 years. I have a 10-year-old daughter and an 11-pound mutt named Minnie Mouse.
Yeah, what kind of dog? I know you said mutt, but what do you think? What do you think it is?
Gosh, who knows? Somewhere between a wiener dog and a chihuahua and terrier.
Right on. And then Lydia, what do you like to do for fun?
For fun, I'm a fair weather hiker. So if it's sunny outside, I like to go for a hike. And then I spend way too much money on puppy yoga. But honestly, I just get really involved with my daughter's Girl Scouts or the local community theater.
Okay, I got to ask about the puppy yoga. Tell me more. You spend too much money on that? Is that
It
a
is way too
series or?
expensive. Yeah, no, you don't actually do a lot of yoga. You just like really get down with like 7 puppies, and we've done dachshunds and little husky puppies and little French bulldogs, and it's an hour and a half of just pure joy. So, but it's really expensive, and it's something I try not to do every week. Only I've limited myself to once a month.
But apparently, an hour and a half of pure joy does have a price tag. Send me the link. I'm interested. I would love to do puppy yoga because I have mentioned on this podcast I have goats like once or twice. Maybe you don't know about that. And I've done goat yoga, and it's a horrible idea. You get a 70-pound Nigerian dwarf goat to get a hoof on a metatarsal on like your hand while you're in downward dog. You're probably breaking a bone. It's not a good idea. It's kind of fun and novel when they're young, the kids. That's what they're called. They jump on your back and stuff. But I think goat yoga is more of a novelty than actually a real thing. But the puppy yoga, that sounds cool.
Yeah, puppy
Um,
yoga is much more enjoyable. They just will chew on your sock and stuff. So that's the only liability.
yeah, we did goat yoga one time and somebody left with less of their yoga mat. I had a goat rip off like an eighth of a mat. I was like, hey, do you want me to replace that? They're like, no, it was worth the memory for sure. All right, Lydia. Well, let's do what we came here to do. I'm going to turn it over to you with your story.
My story begins kind of when I was born, and I was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1984. So it was height of the communist era there. I was born to really young parents. They were both 20 and 21. So even in my early life, I think alcohol was very indebted into that culture and into my young parents' lives. It was always acceptable and around. Every social party involved a bottle of vodka on the table. My first drink was actually when I was either 2 or 3 years old, and I was given a glass of champagne to celebrate my birthday. So it's kind of the laissez-faire attitude people had towards alcohol. And I think that's an important part of my story because that's kind of where my beliefs started out. My mom kind of wanted to get herself out of that situation, and she decided to move and immigrate to the US with just me and her when I was about 6 years old. So she was 26 years old. And I love my mom to death. She still lives 30 minutes away from my house. We're best friends. And I have so much respect and admiration for her for doing what she did. She had $100 in her pocket when we got here, and somehow through cleaning houses, nannying, saving enough money to go to college, she made herself a made woman, you know? The unfortunate part of that a little bit is that I was left out on my own a lot as a kid. I had to kind of grow up and become pretty independent early on, and I wasn't very monitored. I didn't have a lot of authority in my life. So when those feelings came up and I felt a little bit abandoned, and what was there for me was alcohol. I would be sent to Poland every summer to go attend summer camps there. And at summer camp, 14 years old, it was pretty easy to make friends with the older 18-year-olds and have them buy you alcohol. And at 14, I was mixing Coca-Cola with vodka in a can on my field trips out with the camp and stuff. Alcohol just felt like that glass slipper, right? It fit just right. It filled all the lonely spots in my life, all the sadness. It was there for me kind of when nobody else was. So I do appreciate alcohol for what it was for me for a very long time because I wasn't ever really taught those coping skills or really like held in much love or didn't have much space to share any of my emotions. But I mean, alcohol was there for me during that time. And I felt like through middle school, high school, I felt like I got just good at drinking. And by good at drinking, I kind of mean just functional. I knew how to handle my alcohol. I could drink a lot, and I would support other people who would be getting sick or way too drunk while I was drinking myself. And I kind of wore that as a little bit of a badge of honor. Like this was the thing that I was good at, right? Like when everybody else is getting too drunk, embarrassing themselves, I can sit there and hold my liquor. It wasn't all like sunshine and butterflies, right? I definitely put myself into a lot of dangerous situations as a young teenage girl. The one way to get booze was to hang out with the older boys, right? And so thankfully, I did find myself very lucky throughout my life when it came to alcohol. College, 20s, all kind of just continued to drink, right? In my 20s, it kind of ramped up to margarita Mondays, thirsty Thursdays, wine Wednesdays. If it ended with a Y, it was an excuse to drink situation. So I'm pretty sure at that point I was drinking every single day. And while probably at home it was just a glass of wine here and there to feel a little bit like an adult, when you're out with your friends at the bars, it doesn't matter what you're drinking at that point. So I was good to go. And it was a lot of fun. I do want to admit to the fact that I had a blast, which was kind of unfortunate because later on, I think that correlation between alcohol and fun became so strong that when I did have to quit the booze, I really struggled with that connection and how to separate the two. In my 20s, though, I didn't treat people great. I think I pushed a lot of boundaries. I think people in relationships became disposable to me. And my number one relationship all the time was with alcohol. That was my number one priority. I met my husband when I was 27 years old, and we met coming into the rock climbing community kind of separately. We became climbing partners first. We had a bunch of fun. It was kind of a whirlwind romance. We got married pretty soon after that. And then I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And that's kind of the last time I had a good time with alcohol, I want to say, because all of a sudden I had to become responsible.
Lydia, you mentioned your number one relationship was with alcohol. And I think if everybody listening sat with that, at first you're like, no way, it's my husband, it's with my parents, my best friend, it's with my dog or whatnot. But if we sat with that in silence, or at least with one breath, it'd be like, oh yeah, it was with alcohol. How was it when you met your spouse? And then how was it when you had a child? How did that change your relationship with alcohol? And I think you kind of just hinted at it. That was the last time you had fun. You had to, I think you maybe said grow up or mature or whatnot. But how did it go from your number one relationship being alcohol to in your mind, you're like, well, now it should be these other people, but it might not be.
I think when I met my husband, there was still a level of irresponsibility and immaturity. And we kind of entered the relationship with alcohol together, right? He still drank at that time. I drank at that time as well. And we were able to both party and support each other in that. And I think that needed to stop with a child. I think the love of a child is very different than everything else in life. It requires your whole entire heart and a priority and a whole entire focus. And when my relationship with alcohol got threatened because of that, that's kind of where it became ugly. And that's the first time that that relationship with alcohol got threatened, where somebody or something out there said, okay, there needs to be this thing that's going to be more important than your drinking. I don't hear it in stories very often, so I did want to be honest about this one thing. But when I got pregnant, I didn't quit drinking completely. I definitely slowed down. I wasn't drinking quote unquote normally like I was. But I found the articles that said, a glass of wine is better for you than stress, or don't worry, that glass of wine's not going to do much harm to your child. And I use those as my excuses, as my research to continue to drink. I don't recommend it because as you have a child growing up, every single little behavioral problem becomes, oh my gosh, was this because I had that glass of wine that one time? So there's a lot of guilt and shame that goes along with that that I definitely wouldn't recommend for people. But the funny thing is, even during that time, that should have been a huge red flag for me that I couldn't even quit drinking through my pregnancy. But like I said, I was able to continue to deny and to continue to protect that relationship with alcohol so much. Like, oh, yeah, no, I could be pregnant, I could be a parent and still have alcohol as my friend. I was in pretty deep denial.
Lydia, let me jump in and ask, was there a voice before you had your daughter 10 years ago that says, yeah, we should go the pregnancy without alcohol, or this is my number one relationship. Maybe it shouldn't be. Was there something questioning the role that alcohol was playing in your life at that time? You just said you're in
Not
denial,
yet.
but was there even like a little bit? Okay, nothing.
Not yet. And maybe perhaps subconsciously or something. But I mean, I remember the moment that I noticed the first flag. One thing I wanted to mention right after having Brooke, I struggled really hard with postpartum depression and kind of this identity shift. And so it was soon after her that I went right back to drinking because that was the only coping skill that I knew how to get out of those emotions. And I remember coming back from a play date after having a bottle of wine to myself and having her in the car, realizing that I'm drunk and being like, oh shit, I'm risking her life at this point, like red flag. And that was the first red flag that I noticed. And that was really the start of the end. That was the beginning of the end for me. Unfortunately, it didn't go lightly. I didn't know much about recovery or how to quit or how to support myself through it. And the way I did it is through a lot of shame and hate and guilt.
Towards
And I think
yourself.
yes, towards
Okay.
myself. I tried to quit, right? Oh, I won't drink for a month. Couldn't do it. Oh, is it because my family's not important to me? Is it because I'm this terrible person? And I try over and over again, and each time seemed to be a proof to just hate myself even harder and to feel like I don't deserve to be around. The scariest thought that I got to was the fact that my family was better off without me. And that thought process got to a place where my own life was at risk, where I thought I shouldn't be around for them, that they could find better if I just made that space.
When did that show up? Like 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
My daughter was 2 at the time, so
Okay.
it was eight
eight
years
years ago.
ago. thankfully, I had a realization, that my daughter didn't want another mom, a better mom. She wanted me to be that mom. If there's one way to F up your child is to take yourself out of their life. But I could still give her a chance if I just tried to get better. And so I had to burn the ship with my husband. I had to tell him how bad it got. And I ended up enrolling into intensive outpatient treatment at that time. So that was 8 years ago. And I was sober for 4 years during that time. I got myself into IOP, did that for 3 months. Then I stuck with AA for a very long time. Annie Grace's book, This Naked Truth, that kept me very sober as well. And I was sober proudly, and I have no idea how I did it for 4 years. And the thing with that time, and the reason why I went back to drinking, is because I quit for my daughter. I sacrificed my life in order so she could have a mother. And there was a lot of bitterness and resentment around that. And like I said earlier, that kind of codependency of alcohol and fun is something I still held on to true. And my definition of it was okay, I can't drink, I can't have fun anymore. I have to get serious and I have to be a serious parent. And that was honestly no fun, right? One thing I did want to mention is when I first got drinking, I was so good at drinking, right? Like I've had a lot of practice of functional drinking that nobody really thought I had a problem. And I don't know how people could see me drinking with a little tiny baby and they're just like, she's fine. It's just mom wine culture. But nobody really thought I had a problem. And that was a very kind of detrimental seed that got planted in my head early on in my recovery at that time. And over those 4 years, it grew. It grew to maybe I didn't have a problem. Maybe this is something I could handle. Maybe I could do fun and parenting at the same time. And that's kind of why I went back to drinking after 4 years because I wasn't laughing. I wasn't having any fun. I wasn't making any friends. And I just wanted to feel fun again. And so I started drinking wine. At this time, it was more specifically just wine. And at first, it was fine, right? I would say maybe for the first 6 months, it was like a tolerable level of drinking. But I mean, it ramped up pretty soon. Just one bad day, one failed success at work or something, and it's just like, oh, well, wine. Oh, well, wine, right? And then it quickly became an everyday thing.
Lydia, you had a line earlier. You talked about the beginning of the end, and I liked how you phrased that. I don't know if I've heard that before. Can you give a time frame of like when the end was? Was it 8/31, 2025, would you say, with like 8 years?
No, it was that moment where I was driving the car with my 3-month-old daughter. That was
Okay.
it. That's when
Okay.
I realized that my drinking became dangerous, that it was dangerous to somebody's life.
Gotcha. The interview I did last week with Harvey, I think it was 37 years when that was the beginning to the end. It was 37 years before he quit drinking when he said, wait a second, I'm going to do dry January. Okay. So there's time. Listeners, I'm trying to make that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. 8 more years to figure it out.
And so be kind and be patient to yourself with this process. And Lydia, can you comment just a little bit more on trying to shame yourself out of a drinking problem, like tough loving yourself, probably with really, really ferocious words to yourself? And maybe it did work, but do you think there was a different approach that you could have taken?
I mean, while it did work, while I did get sober, it was literally my life or sobriety. The fact that that self-hatred didn't take me out of this world is a miracle. So I would not recommend that for anybody. That self-hatred and that shame and that guilt has no place in recovery. Absolutely no place. That's not going to, I can't speak to for everybody, but I don't think that's what's going to get you sober. Maybe it'll get you far enough. Maybe it'll get you to take an action, hopefully, but it's not going to help you recover. It's not going to help you build that life and sobriety that you need to build in order to make it worthwhile.
So earlier you mentioned, at the end of the 4 years, looking back, you're like, nobody knew. It wasn't even this big a deal. Nobody even confronted me about that. And I've heard that so many times on this podcast, it mirrors my own experience. And then there's one word that shows up, it's constant. Nobody knew yet or until. And then, like, that's when eventually people will find out. Did something happen? Did your husband say, looks like your number one relationship is not with us, it's with alcohol? Did somebody on the external say, Lydia, what's going on here?
Absolutely. The fun thing about quitting drinking and then going back to drinking is that you're hella monitored by everybody at that point, not just yourself, but like my mom, my husband, my friends, they knew I quit drinking for 4 years. I wasn't drinking. So when I went back to drinking and I had to explain to them, oh no, I'm fine. This isn't a problem. They're going to watch you and they're going to see how many drinks you're drinking. And so that's where the sneaking around, the lying started to happen, where I tried to hide just how bad it was, but I was not as good at it anymore as I was before. And particularly because now people were paying attention and now people were seeing the destruction. And it absolutely got to a point where I didn't like drinking towards the end at home because I was being monitored so much that I would spend a lot of time drinking outside of the house and lying about it. Oh, no, I didn't drink that. Oh, I just had one glass, before. And I would come home late. And again, alcohol was winning the priority relationship at that point, and it was obvious. And there was in that last summer, that last year, my husband said, you're going to lose your family if you continue doing this. And I remember that hit me so hard, my heart, like that I could lose everything for something so stupid, but had just such a hold on me. And the thing that struggled with the second time around getting sober is I think it's harder. I think it's so much harder because you can see yourself being an idiot. You can see exactly what's happening and you try to quit. Like I've had a million day ones, even the second time around, where I was like, oh, if I could just make it a month. And I couldn't for 3 years. I could not drink for a month. And I just thought it was impossible. I gave up that last summer. I was like, recovery is not for me. I've tried so much. I've tried all of the things, all of the programs, read all of the books, and nothing's working.
When you say that summer, was that the summer of 2025 last
That
year?
was the summer of 2025.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then
And
when did
then
your husband say you might lose your family? The same, like,
that was that summer. Yeah.
okay.
And it was just, there was a lot of things spiraling out of control. Everything was condensing into negative consequences. It was just one of those do or die moments in the end. The thing is, it didn't blow up spectacularly. There wasn't this like rock bottom moment. There was plenty. I had rock bottom moments and just kept digging, like no problem with rock bottom moments. In the end, I was drinking earlier and earlier in the day just to feel okay. It wasn't even just to feel good anymore or to have fun. It was just to be able to survive the day. And I just became, as they say, so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was exhausted from my life. And I thought it was impossible to get out because I tried so often. And there was this moment that I remember we were at this campsite this last week of summer. And there was a sticker where I was buying my wine that said, even the word impossible says I'm possible. And I
Mm.
don't know, but that it was just a little like a little hand from my life gripping my hand and being like, you know what, softly, like you can do this. And I don't know, that was just a little sliver of hope that I needed to be like, maybe one more time. Let's try one more time. And that's when me and my husband kind of set that date, be like, September, summer's over, September, we're going to start sober.
Do you think that added accountability with your husband was what was needed?
No, honestly, because we've done it before. We've gotten sober before, went back to drinking before. The thing that was my accountability is Costa Rica registration opened up that week for
Oh,
Cafe RE. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can book this. It's 5 months away, and I just need to stay sober until then, or else I can't go. I have to cancel the trip and I can't go if I drink. And that was the accountability I needed. I needed a goalpost in the future that got me at least a month underneath my feet because I could not get past that 30-day point.
Interesting. And I have heard this before where people will register for our Bozeman retreat and they'll circle it on the calendar months out or a Costa Rica retreat. Look at this. This is so cool because we have sobriety requirements. It's not 5 months, but we can't have people detoxing on the trip. And I've heard that that's quite powerful sobriety fuel. That is so cool to hear. What were the first couple months like? Were you like, there is a sobriety requirement, but it's not now. I can drink until then?
That did come up, definitely. I was pretty hard on the fact that if I drank out, I cancel. The first month, thankfully, my pink cloud arrived and I was just living life high on the fact that my body was feeling better. Mentally, I was feeling better. Once I got past that initial first week of suck, I was doing great. And I was fantastic and I was so excited. And then I got a little itchy around day 29, like I always do, but it was that accountability that kept going. And then month two, I crashed hard. I crashed so hard from that high. And that second month was a lot of just early bedtimes, taking sick days, eating lots of ice cream, and just being open. And the one thing that I also found that was incredibly helpful was the Cafe RE community and the fact that they have chats, multiple chats every single day of the week. So I could feel like shit and I could still show up, no camera, onto a chat and just have a space where all of that is held and connect with somebody and see myself in somebody else's story and in somebody else's recovery as well. And see the people that are on there that are like, 4, 5, 7 years and be like, wow, if they can, I can. I just have to make it through this. And then month two turned into, month three, which had its own season and on and went. It was an emotional up and down, and I still go through absolute emotional roller coasters probably on the hour every single day. But I keep proving to myself that I can live through it and that there is another day and another hour and another emotion right around the corner and that it's possible. And it was just living through those firsts were really hard. Firsts again, I should say. But, doing this might sound great, but going to a Girl Scout meeting and being present for that, being present for the girls, doing something like that proved to me just how much sobriety held. Showing up for to help my daughter with homework at night, right? In that moment, in that present space, I would be like, wow, what would I be doing right now instead? And maybe I'd be at the bar drinking, or maybe I'd be watching a show, having a glass of wine because I needed to relax. But instead, I was here with my daughter and I just kept stacking up wins. And I recognized them. I recognized them for what they were. And so that's what kept me going.
Lydia, I love the self-care in month two. I think I heard ice cream, sick days, just chilling out. Can you explain a little bit more about that crash? So maybe people recently quit drinking and like, wow, I don't feel very good. There's a word for it. It's called pause post-acute withdrawal symptoms, not syndrome. It's basically like your body, the system's recalibrating, dopamine system, your sleeping system, your digestive system, everything. But what was that crash like for you and what gave you the motivation to keep going?
Well, I was overwhelmed and I was overwhelmed by life. I was overwhelmed by emotions, by relationships. It was a lot of stress and I needed to learn how to slow down. And that was my life, I think, trying to teach me a lesson. It was my life trying to teach me in the fact that I couldn't live on that high, saying yes to everything, volunteering for everything, and that I needed to learn how to take rests and breaks as well. It was a lot of exhaustion. It was a lot of waking up to rainy days here in Seattle doesn't help, but also just a lot of finding support in the little things. And I think during that time, I really tried to focus on finding joy in just the smallest things.
And then when did you turn a corner? Or did you turn a corner saying, you know what, I think I can do this. This is worth it.
I think I turned a corner, a major corner at that Costa Rica retreat, right? Like I made it. I made it. I stayed sober all the way until I could go to Costa Rica. And that experience was just this culmination of why I was doing this. I was no longer doing this just for my daughter. I was no longer doing this just so I could be a responsible adult and to show up the way people expected me to. I was doing this for me. And I was doing this because I found a love for myself, for my authentic, goofy, weird, nervous self. And that's who I wanted to become sober for. And Costa Rica was just, it was a group of people in the same place, all just so full of love for each other, for ourselves, for our journeys, that it felt exactly like we were where we belonged. And that was just kind of I want this to be the rest of my life. I want to have these experiences. I want to have these relationships, these connections, these magical moments. Those never happened at a bar, drunk with a bunch of random strangers. Those happen in those vulnerable moments where we have a share circle on the beach in 98-degree sun weather. It was magical. And I know there's more of that in sobriety. And I know that that's where I can find it. And I'm going to continue to look for those things in life. They're there.
Yeah, listeners, I was on the Costa Rica trip. That's what we do. Recovery Elevator does sober travel. We got back about 3 weeks ago. I think the trip ended. And day 4, day 5, my wife helps out as well. She turned to me and she says, "This group has not stopped talking," which is a great thing. The opposite of addiction is connection. And so to see a group connecting nonstop, and it's the way for all of our retreats, that's how it goes. But for some reason with this trip, she noticed like, wow, everybody is really connecting. And there were some major challenges on this one too. The lodging place we were at, the internet went out on several places. There was no water for 3 days. We had a rental car reserved and
No running water. We did have our poop water from the pool, as we called it, to
oh
flush
yeah,
our
we
toilets.
we had to give people buckets to go to the pool and get water from the pool to come in and fill your toilet up. Right? And we had a rental car that broke down. They did not replace us with a new car, but it was just so cool to see how everybody responded with some of the principles that we practice in recovery. The big one is acceptance of like, hey guys, this is what it is. We're going to give you a bottle of water to flush the toilet. And everybody was so cool with it. So, yeah, Lydia, thank you for being cool with it. I think we had a really good group. What's next for you in sobriety? Costa Rica's over. And geographically, that's not where we're at right now. And that's the magic of these trips, but they'll never be the same. We'll never get that group of people together in Costa Rica. And it works because everybody's so present. They're there. But what's next for you after that trip?
My therapist actually brought this up. She mentioned I either need to go to Costa Rica once a month or I need to figure out how to bring Costa Rica home. So that's what I'm working on now is I'm bringing Costa Rica home and I'm trying to identify like what it was about Costa Rica that really made that moment magical. And I think number one is community. And that's the one thing that I'm doing a lot differently than I did for those 4 years that I was sober is I found a community where I feel I belong. I found a community that's different than AA. AA has a time and a place for people, and I definitely appreciated it for what it was. And I still go occasionally because it's so interesting to hear other people's stories. But at Cafe RE, I just found a group of people that do different things in recovery. Like, I think we've all taken bits of AA, bits of things we've read, bits of a community, or completely no program at all. And we come together and we support each other. So it's this like utilitarian sobriety recovery movement, right? And so that's kind of where I felt like I belonged. And the one thing that was so amazing about that Costa Rica trip is I remember coming out of the airport and meeting the group, and we're all going to go ride together to the location. And I immediately just came as myself. Here I am, this totally dorky, exhausted, hot person. And I was just like, Lydia, hey, so good to see you. It was immediate acceptance. And I think a lot of people mention that. This is the first place I think in my whole entire life that I was 100% accepted for who I was and who I am on the inside. To be able to find that community, I think is incredibly important because you're loved for who you are.
I love how your therapist said you got two options: go to Costa Rica or bring it to you, right? The second one's the better option. And that almost leads me to my next question. Earlier in the interview, you talked about how alcohol was so closely coupled to fun. And I think the fun in Costa Rica was just being a community, being in an environment where you can show up as yourself. It is. That's the magic of how it works. How are you going to have fun in life, be joyful, lighthearted after the trip? And maybe it's not a fully community thing, but is there other areas where you want to explore, where you want to have fun?
The lucky thing in getting sober, I guess, in your 40s is your idea of fun changes anyway. Like, I'm not trying to be 20 and fun anymore. That just sounds exhausting. I want to be in bed at 10. I want to read a good book. That's what my fun starts to sound like a little bit. The one thing that I've also been trying to focus on is the little joys in life. So I really get up every morning with the intention of finding the little joys, the little moments of peace, little moments of happiness. And those stack up. Like, I feel like when I found happiness drinking or fun or ecstatic laughing, it was chaotic. It was too much almost, right? It was manic almost to a point, I think I want to say. While this happiness is much more settled and smoother. The other thing that I realized this time around too is when I was drinking, I was numbing all of the hard emotions. That was the point of my coping skill, is to numb out the bad emotions, the anxiety, the fear, the loneliness, the abandonment. The thing is, I was numbing out all feelings, all emotions. And I wasn't really feeling joy or love either. And this time around, the love I feel for my daughter, for my husband, my family, my friends, even the recovery community is just like, wow, I was missing out on so much by all that numbing. And so just that amount of love in my life right now is really what's keeping me going.
That is so incredible to hear that you're open to all that and you're receiving that love because you can't only receive it. It's a cycle. It comes in, it goes out. That's so awesome to hear. I've got one more question, Lydia, before we hit the rapid fire round. What's on the horizon? You had 4 years before with AA. Yeah, how are we going to get there? I know it's one day at a time. That's like a universal teaching that I fully subscribe to. At first, I didn't. Now I'm on board. But what's the game plan here moving forward?
I'm going to continue to stay connected with the community. I think that's very important. I'm going to continue to educate myself and to keep alcohol and the risks and the dangers there top of mind. But I'm also going to build a life outside of recovery. I don't think I did that a lot in my first 4 years. And that's, the local community theater is something I'm getting involved with. And those are amazing people that also have a lot of love and goodness. And then working with the Girl Scouts with my daughter's troop, that's amazing. Building up the youth of tomorrow and their resilience and their coping skills pays it forward. And I'm just going to celebrate the little wins. Notice the benefits that stack up. Notice how good I feel and just celebrate it. And celebrate it with a community, not just by myself. Shout it from the rooftops.
Lydia, we have reached the rapid fire round. If you can answer these questions in 5 to 10 seconds, that would be great. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. What's the one thing you've learned about yourself?
My persistence, I think. If something doesn't work, I try something new. And that's how I've stacked up a toolbox full of tools in sobriety.
What's your best sober moment?
My best sober moment. I want to say my daughter because as like a responsible mother, that's what you want to say. But I keep coming back to releasing those baby turtles in Costa Rica that just hatched and then they make their way to the ocean and you're just like, oh,
That's powerful. What's your favorite alcohol-free drink?
Ice green tea with honey.
And then what's the point of life?
I think the point of life is to find out the point of life. I think it's just like to immerse yourself in the life and figure out what it is that brings meaning and purpose into your life, and then find the next thing, and then find the next thing until your life is just full of meaning and purpose.
Do you still speak Polish?
Tak, mówię po polsku.
All right. How do you say?
My husband is actually learning now too, so I get to speak Polish with him as well.
How do you say I don't drink in Polish?
Nie piję alkoholu.
What has recovery made possible for you, Lydia?
Love.
If you could name a baby chicken, what would you name it?
Oh my gosh, what a difficult question. I want to say chickpea, but that is so lame.
I like it, actually. Chickpea. That might stick. Last question. What parting piece of guidance can you give the listeners, Lidia?
Can I use the overused AA quote of keep coming back? It works if you work it. Just if something doesn't work, try another thing. There's so many recovery tools out there that something's going to speak to you. Just try the next thing.
And Lidia, before we depart, let's hear your own "you might need to ditch the booze if" line.
Oh, you might need to ditch the booze if you get kicked out of an airplane bar and you just go next door and continue drinking.
Yeah, we're in the right spot. We are for sure. Lidia, that flew by. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was great meeting you in person about a month ago on the trip, and I know we'll connect more in Cafe RE. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
The second best way to feel better is to get out into nature, and it's best done in unmanicured nature. What I mean by that is go somewhere where trees have fallen over and they're not cut up and picked up. The body recognizes this chaos. There's a mixture of life and death in perfect harmony happening together. This does wonders for your nervous system. It's because in your DNA, for millions of years, our ancestors have been going to nature when they're not feeling good. They go to nooks, to crannies, to hidden canyons, places on bluffs, a place behind a tree, somewhere where a waterfall can drown out the voices inside their own heads. This one also has a 100% effectiveness rate for me. I'm lucky to live where I live, and I live anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes away from deep pine forests. I know several spots just off the hiking trail where I can go and just be alone in nature. I want to thank our production team for today's episode. We have our editor, Natasha, Robin on pre-production, and Chris on the mixing boards putting it all together. Recovery Elevator, you took the elevator down, you got to take the stairs back up. We can do this.
I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior.